This is actually my personal list of French authors, which are my favorite authors, and it was very hard for me to do that because French literature is abundant with great writers in literature, and not only in literature but also in philosophy, literary criticism, history, essay writing, and all kinds of literary productions that you may think of. So this was very hard for me to select these writers, but anyway, this is my list. Hello guys, and welcome back to another video about literature. My name is Sohail, and if you are interested in topics related to literature, reading, literary criticism, and so on, hit that subscribe button to watch my future videos as well. For centuries, French literature has been an object of national pride for French people, and this is because most of the writers in this literature are concerned with the concept of history and how history influenced their literature, their behavior, their culture, and so on. So this concept of history is very important in these works of literature. And another important and interesting fact is that France ranks the first one in the Nobel Prize winners in literature. But some of the writers, including Samuel Beckett and Albert Camus, are from different nations, but they got their national awards and prizes, including the Nobel Prize, under the name of France. And this is a very interesting fact, but I want to show you that how this kind of literature is abundant with great writers. Anyway, let's talk about these important writers in my list. I will refer to 8 important writers in my favorite list of French writers, but anyway, I like all of them because this literature is very great, with great themes and great geniuses in literature. So let's talk about these writers. Very bad that I cannot read these works of literature in French language because I don't know how French language. So I know English and Persian, so very bad, but no way. Let's talk about it. The first writer we are going to talk about is actually number 8. I mean the number 8 in my list of favorite authors in French literature. I mean Victor Hugo. He's the one whose name comes nearly in all of the list of the best authors in the world, and he is well known for the creation and characterization of the best character, Jean Valjean, in Les Miserables. So he is responsible for this creation and this genius character he created in that novel. Examining the nature of law and grace, this novel elaborates upon many themes. I mean, it talks about politics, it talks about religion, familial love, nationalism, talks about the architecture and urban structures of the Paris, and so on. It talks about everything, and this is one of the examples and signs of actually a romantic literature as well as classic writers, because classic writers are the ones who talk about everything, who talk about every aspect of their country, every aspect of a subject, a topic, and so on. So this is one of the signs of a classic which we see in the Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. And this is what I love about the classics, because this is one of the most important features, that they are completely conscious of everything that influence everything. So this leads to readers and led them to comment on the actions and behaviors of the characters and people. So this is very important. So Victor Hugo belongs to the age of Romanticism in literature, and we see the signs of Romanticism as well as realism in his works, but he is very great in the case of romantic literature. And Jean Valjean is also considered a romantic character. So be sure to read that novel. You can also read The Hunchback of Notre Dame and also The Man Who Laughs. These are also the greatest works by this writer. The author number 7 is Gustave Flaubert, which is the father of literary realism in French literature, and I really love this writer because of his most important work, Madame Bovary. This is a very important novel, and every single sentence of it can be discussed and analyzed, and this is what we mean by Gustave Flaubert, because this is the style of writing of Flaubert. Every sentence, every word, every diction is important in analyzing Gustave Flaubert, and this is because he was a perfectionist in literature. Every sentence, every paragraph must have a significance in the novel, and he influenced many realistic novelists and also the modernist novelists after him. So he is considered also a classic, especially Madame Bovary is a kind of classic novel which influenced many writers, including Guy de Maupassant. I will talk about that. So we have Gustave Flaubert in number 7. Just remember that when you are reading Madame Bovary, you need to be a slow reader. You need to ponder upon every sentence, every word, every diction. So you need to be very calm and spend time reading that novel to gain the most out of it. So these are really great novels. So I should make separate videos about Madame Bovary, Les Miserables, and so on. So these novels are very important and classic, so try to read Madame Bovary for sure. The writer number 6 is of course Emil Zola in my list, because he is one of the greatest writers of French literature, and not only a novelist but also a playwright, essayist, and one of the great practitioners of naturalism. I mean, every kind of content about naturalism has Emil Zola in its core. So this is one of the core writers of naturalism and theatrical naturalism as well. So we are coming from Victor Hugo through Romanticism, coming to Flaubert as a realist, and now we have Emil Zola as the naturalist writer in French literature. So this order is very beautifully presented here. Emil Zola strongly claimed that naturalistic literature concerns with the deep human psychology, and it should experimentally depict that human psychology, and it should not present characters who are larger than life. So this realistic aspect must be there, but it must go beyond that realistic perspective to deep into the minds of the characters and their psychological problems and complexes and so on. So this was the main concern of Zola in literature. Emil Zola wrote a bunch of literary works, so the most important ones are actually the ones I'm going to tell you, because the names are very complex, so let me read them from the paper. The novel Les Mistresses de Marseille, actually Thérèse Raquin, and also The Flood. These are the most important works by Emil Zola, and you can read them and enjoy the kind of naturalistic and realistic actually depiction of life we are talking about. He is one of the best naturalist writers in the world, as I mentioned earlier in this video. The writer number 5 is of course Marcel Proust, who is a very well-known writer in French literature, and he is famous for his monumental novel Remembrance of the Things Past, also translated into English as In Search of Lost Time, which is a very long novel. It contains of 7 volumes from 1913 to 1927. This is a very long novel, so you need to take time to read this. So he is exactly find his place in my favorite writers of French literature, because I read that novel and it is a very nice novel. Marcel Proust is considered by many writers and critics as the most influential writer in the 20th century, and his long and lengthy novels concerns mostly with the theme of involuntary memory. What we mean by involuntary memory? This is a sub category of the memory itself, which the cues in our daily life actually refers us back to our recollected memories in the past. So you see this one and you remember something in your past, and this really happens to all of us. So most of the novels by Marcel Proust are actually deal with this kind of involuntary memory, how one thing is touched by the character and then a great memory is coming to the story. This is a kind of great theme he chose, and I had not a character or a writer in my mind that put emphasis on this kind of theme. So I think Marcel Proust is the one and the only one who deals with this kind of involuntary memory. Try to give that a shot to see how it goes and how you will like that 7-volume novel. I think you need to pay actually 4 months or 5 months to this novel. This can be enough for reading. The writer number 4 is Charles Baudrillard, and finally we come to a poet, one of the greatest poets in French literature, and also a critic and essay writer. His poems are considered to have the mastery of rhyme and rhythm, and also it exhibits the exoticism which is inherited from the Romantics in literature, but it has its roots in the real life of the people. So this sense of romanticism is what makes me to love Baudrillard, and I love the writers of romanticism from every country, from every age. The romantic literature is the best in my opinion. Actually, you need to provide a collection of his poems and start reading his poems, because all of them are absolutely brilliant, and I cannot refer you to check 1 single or 2 single poems that are best. But one of the greatest poems by Charles Baudrillard is The Flowers of Evil. You can start reading that, because that is a masterpiece by this writer. But all of his poems are absolutely brilliant and great. What is special about Charles Baudrillard is his themes and tones, and that he was the one who rejects the supremacy of nature and also the goodness in human beings that is supported by the Romantics. And this was when Baudrillard is actually separated from the Romantics in some ways, because he was more concerned in the social conditions and the vice and decadence of the human souls. He uses this. He tries to reflect the romanticism in his poems, but this romanticism is a little different from those romantics, because those romantics were optimistic about nature, about human souls, but Baudrillard is not like that. He sees human beings as the ones who are going to decadence, the ones who are actually doing bad things and so on. So we can say that romanticism is somehow optimistic, but the romanticism provided by Baudrillard is the dark side of it. Yes, this can be a great description about Baudrillard. The writer number 3 is Jean-Paul Sartre, which is not only a novelist, a playwright, a screenwriter, political activist, philosopher, mostly philosopher, and a literary critic. One of the prolific writers of literature and a leading figure in 20th century philosophy in the world, and also a leading figure in Marxism. Jean-Paul Sartre is one of the key figures in the philosophy of existentialism and also phenomenology, and his works continue to influence many fields of studies, including sociology, critical studies, literary studies, and also post-colonial analysis. So he was a very great writer, and in 1964 he was awarded the Nobel Prize in literature, but he declined that because he said that he will always decline the literary awards and prizes, because he doesn't want to allow himself to be an institution. This is a very great idea, and he was provoking to all literature and literary authors. I should really devote a separate video to this author, because he was a great influence in my personal life, as well as Albert Camus, which I'm going to talk about. These writers are very influential in my life, and when I read their works, I become an existentialist, I become an absurdist, and they were very important figures in my life. So I will devote to them and to their ideas and great thoughts they are depicting. Wait for that. The author number 2 is Guy de Maupassant, which I actually know this author near 1 year ago. So I know him very little, but I really love this author because he was a great realist as well as a naturalist writer in the 20th century literature, especially the French literature, and he was concerned also with the concept of history in his country, and he was one of the fathers of short story writing in literature alongside O. Henry or Chekhov. So he is a great writer. We have lots of short stories, nearly 300 short stories by this author is published, and you need to give that a try because he is talking about the pessimistic side of human beings and human lives and human complexities, and this is very real. I mean, we have lots of authors talking about the optimistic worldview, optimistic sides of life, and this is very good, but most of life is concerned with pessimism, and I love writers with pessimistic views, including Sartre and also Camus. So Guy de Maupassant is for sure the number second in my list of favorite authors. Guy de Maupassant is highly influenced by Gustave Flaubert because he was the master of Guy de Maupassant, so they were directly in relation. So when we are reading Guy de Maupassant, because he was a student of Flaubert, we need to pay attention to every part of the stories. So these are short stories, but they have lots of ideas, even more than a novel. So be careful when you are reading Guy de Maupassant. You need to consider everything, every detail is important because he was the student of Gustave Flaubert. So this is very important. Bol de Suif and also The Necklace are the greatest stories I've read from Guy de Maupassant, and I really recommend you to read those stories. And the final writer, which is my top favorite French writer in literature, and this is Albert Camus. I really love this author. I can talk about him hours and hours. The kind of absurdism and the hope he finds in the core of absurdism is spectacular, and we cannot find an example for him. And this is for sure my favorite writer in French language, and also one of my favorite writers above all. So I really love Albert Camus. His greatest novels, you may know, this is The Stranger, The Plague, The Fall, The Myth of Sisyphus, The Rebel, and lots of stories about philosophy and literature. This is a complete package of literary genius. Philosophically, Camus' views resulted in the rise of what we now considered as the absurdism, but some of the critics actually labeled him as an existential, but he always rejected that label, and he said that he was an absurdist, the one who finds hope in the absurdism. This is very important for me, and so this is very important that these strange and hard philosophical ideas are presented in the structure of novels and stories. So on the one hand, you read the stories and enjoy the stories he is writing, and on the other hand, you learn about the philosophy behind the characters, behind the themes and settings of stories, and this is really shows a genius behind that piece of work. Philosophical novels. So all of the novels by Albert Camus are somehow philosophical. The most important point in philosophy of Albert Camus is that he was focused on the questions around the existential beliefs. I mean, he talked about the absurdity, the absence of meaning in our life and the man's search for that meaning, and he gives no answer. He just say that man should actually embrace this kind of meaninglessness, and this embracement is very important for us. This is a great lesson for our lives, that we always look for meaning, and this is wrong. We should embrace this meaninglessness and find meaning out of this meaninglessness. This is very important. This is very hard and complex to understand, but very beautifully true. And I love this kind of philosophy about Albert Camus. This is necessary. We all need to remember this in our life. So give this writer a chance, and you see that how he actually gives you the best ideas you need to learn in your life. So this is my first favorite writer in French literature. Well, this is the end of this great video about my top 8 writers in French literature. I love all of French literature writers, but these are my first 8 ones, and I love all of them at the same time, and I enjoyed reading them. So I hope this video gives you the power and energy to go and search and actually read these works of art and enjoy reading them. So I'm looking forward to your comments about these writers, about this video, and also I'm looking forward to your comments about your favorite writers in French language and how you read and what did you read about these writers. This is very important for me to hear about you. So this is it. Thanks for your attention and time. Take care.